Professor Kethera adjusted her bioluminescent teaching tendrils as the mixed species medical class settled into their learning pods. Today's xenobiology lecture would cover the recently discovered species from Sol 3, and she had prepared what she believed would be a straightforward lesson on human physiology. "Students," she began, her voice translating smoothly through the universal communication matrix. "Today we examine the humans, a species that has somehow survived on a death world despite possessing what appears to be critically flawed biology." A crystalline student named Shard raised a geometric appendage. "Professor, our preliminary scans show they lack any natural armor, toxin production, or energy projection capabilities. How do they defend themselves?" "An excellent question," Professor Kethera replied, activating the holographic display. "Observe their skeletal structure. Note how fragile it appears compared to the reinforced carapaces of civilized species." The three-dimensional human skeleton rotated slowly before the class. Gasps and clicks of dismay echoed from various students as they processed the information. "But Professor," interrupted Vex, a Thranic student whose species possessed redundant organ systems, "this design seems suicidal. A single impact could shatter these bones." "Indeed," the professor continued. "Yet observe what happens when a human bone fractures." The hologram shifted, showing the bone healing process in accelerated time. Rather than requiring biomechanical replacement, the bone repairs itself and becomes stronger at the break point. The class fell silent, their various sensory organs focused intently on the display. "Furthermore," Professor Kethera continued, warming to her subject, "humans possess an extraordinary ability to adapt to damage. Their cardiovascular system can develop alternative pathways around blockages. Their neural tissue can reassign functions when damaged. Their liver can regenerate from as little as 25% remaining tissue." Zilka, a vaporin whose species had evolved past physical form millennia ago, materialized a questioning pseudopod. "Professor, these sound less like flaws and more like advantages?" The professor's tendrils flickered with academic excitement. "Precisely. But their adaptability extends beyond mere healing. Observe their muscular system." The hologram shifted to show human muscle fiber. Under stress, rather than tearing and requiring replacement, human muscles actually grow stronger. A collective intake of various atmospheric mixtures rippled through the classroom. "Professor," called out Torgon, a heavily armored Brutaxian, "my species requires months of medical supervision for any significant physical stress. How do humans manage this?" "They view it as recreation," Professor Kethera replied, unable to suppress what humans might recognize as amusement. "They deliberately stress their bodies for something they call fun. They climb mountains, run great distances, and lift heavy objects repeatedly until their muscles adapt and strengthen." The hologram now displayed a human marathon runner crossing a finish line, sweat streaming, face contorted with exhaustion, but unmistakably expressing joy. "But surely," interjected Mira, a delicate Elvani whose species required carefully controlled environments, "such activities would be fatal?" "On the contrary," the professor continued, "humans require regular physical stress to maintain optimal health. Prolonged periods without challenge cause their systems to deteriorate. They have evolved to thrive on adversity." The classroom erupted in confused chatter as students struggled to comprehend this biological paradox. Professor Kethera allowed the discussion to continue for several moments before calling for attention. "Students, this brings us to perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human physiology. When faced with extreme danger, their bodies flood with natural chemical compounds that temporarily enhance strength, speed, and pain tolerance while suppressing higher reasoning functions." "Chemical enhancement?" squeaked Pip, a tiny Flurbian. "That sounds like combat stimulants." "Naturally occurring combat stimulants," the professor confirmed. This adrenaline response has enabled individual humans to perform feats that should be physically impossible, lifting vehicles to save trapped individuals, running impossible distances, fighting off creatures many times their size. As the lecture concluded, the students sat in stunned silence, each contemplating the same disturbing realization. These fragile-looking humans weren't the weak, vulnerable species they appeared to be. They were biological miracles, creatures so perfectly adapted to surviving adversity that hardship itself made them stronger. Perhaps, they thought collectively, it was fortunate that humans seemed inclined toward healing rather than conquest.